Hi America, I'm Alan Repke, Inform TV, Box 333, Alexandria, Minnesota. And today we're going to take a look at a clip here relating to farm policy. And what I'm getting at here today is the fact that all of a sudden Senator Hoeven from North Dakota, as well as his Republican caucus, is saying that we need to sweeten crop insurance more than we're doing right now. And the reality is we need a farm bill passed, and we need it passed now. We've had a Secretary of Agriculture, Vilsack, that's been in office now pushing 12 years, and he wasn't aware, I guess, that every 5 years we need to pass a new farm bill, as well as look at what we're doing with supplemental nutrition. And they're talking $1.5 trillion over a 10-year period, and it's time we not only change the farm bill, but this will be just the start of some major changes. We have to see that we repair the House of Representatives. That is a broken body. It's an outdated body. It needs to be shrunk to about 200 members, and so they know each other and they're paid better and get something done. And when we look at our politicians now of saying we need to spend more money on very successful farmers, it becomes the point where somebody's got to speak up. I have a background in ag, took on the system and lost big time, but the reality, I was on farms on 6 continents, traveling both farmers and agribusiness people, and contrary to what the elite like to say, there isn't anything more broad-based than agriculture and farming and agribusiness. He's involved in cutting-edge technology with the computer industry today, with seed and hybrid selection, transportation of products to the world that need to be there, energy, both from a standpoint of renewable energy and the major changes that corn-based ethanol has made. Yet at the same time, we have a Congress that is not utilizing that resource or seeing that the world uses that. So we keep our supply in balance when it comes to corn, soybeans, wheat, and all the essential crops that you and I consume on a daily basis and will in the future. But what I want to do right now is give you a little insight on a story that was aired on CBS Minneapolis. And I hope these two or that channel picks up on what I'm talking about. And I'm counting on you people in the Twin Cities, as well as wherever I can get this on, to put some pressure on WCCO, CBS Minneapolis, and to put this on all the CBS outlets in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, and Wisconsin, and to see if people think that we need to subsidize more things for our farmers. The reality is we don't. And we need to get away from letting these journalists and these media companies talk about a 10-year savings or a 10-year budget. We can't even get the Congress of the United States right now to even pass a 2-year budget, let alone a 10-year budget. And in the process here, I want to see that the Farm Bill, the 24 Farm Bill that should have been the 23 Farm Bill, is based on a 5-year budget and nothing more. And when we set the budget at 5 years, it stays there. We've got Powell and our traditional Fed people talking about interest rates, and the reality is we need to keep interest rates at a flat 5.5%, maybe even 6%, until this inflation goes down for one full quarter below 1%. Then we start to send a message to the marketplace, as well as to Wall Street, as well as to homeowners. When we look at housing, the ridiculousness now, even here in Alexandria, the average house that was built this past year was $435,000. We've got a lot of super high-end people here in Alexandria that live on the lakes and come here to the heart of the land of 10,000 lakes. Yet then we have the other half just getting lousy wages that hardly can afford a roof over their head or 3 meals a day. We have to put things back in balance and reestablish a true middle class that covers a large area. But from a standpoint now, I'm going to switch to focus on, we're recording this on April 14th, right after the mess we had in Gaza, and the war continues in Ukraine and Crimea. But I want to show you what was said by a farmer that I know well. His grandparents were my godparents and had an incredible influence, just like my other godparents, Wallace and Ethel, neighbors Leighton and Eileen, Spike and Isla, Clarence and Adele, and the Swices, and many more. And so from a standpoint, rural America has a lot to say, if you allow me to say it. Listen to this clip when it comes to devastating hail. And remember now, Hoeven and the Republican caucus want to improve this more. And I'll start it and stop it so you get an understanding of where I'm coming from. The 2023 crop had mind-bogglingly good coverage. They had, for the price for corn, they had a guarantee of $5.91 a bushel for their corn. And what we're facing now, we just had a WASDE report on Thursday that says now the average price for a corn farmer selling his 2023 crop will be only $4.70 a bushel. And so listen to this little tape, and I'm not against Mr. Ryberg or his family or any of the guys in Renville County, but we need to do an audit on this little group of farmers and throw it in the face of Congress, and to see that we have sound policy, a price support system like the Repke farm bill would be, that not only supports prices here, but supports prices all over the world and gets a meaningful price for our friends in Ukraine that are essential exporters now of corn, wheat, and soybeans. Our farmers in Australia and South America. And I'll give you a little insight as well, the disastrous policy. Just think of that. There's 4 countries that produce 90% of the soybeans that are essential for cooking oil and soybean meal to feed chickens, hogs, and other livestock. And the race to the bottom, who can sell it the cheapest? Instead of, let's see that the price is enough that United States, Europe, South America is high enough where government pays its own way through taxation from high enough income from employees as well as businesses. Now listen to this little clip from August of 2023. A devastating hailstorm went through, and no farmer wants to lose a crop. But there were some things said in here that aren't quite right. And we want that whole little area. We want to see what that 1,000-acre farmer went through in there that was caught in hail. And some of my sources tell Brian Ryberg got caught a hailstorm or two a few years ago. So from a standpoint of, yes, it's a risky business, but the reality, huge crop insurance program and subsidies have taken it in a new direction. And what I want you to know before you listen to this, insurance, what car insurance is going up, homeowners insurance is going up. When we talk about Hoven and the Republican caucus says we're not doing enough for our multi-millionaire farmers, just think of that. This farm and all these Renville County farmers and farmers all over the Corn Belt, all over the country, you in 23 paid 62% of the premium. And when you look at what the coverage is, and when this devastation of this crop area here on his Brian's cornfield and his neighbors right in that area, do you realize he hadn't likely paid a penny in premium yet? Your 62% got the program going. They don't pay their premium until October, or when this loss is paid. And when Brian refers to you don't make any money on crop insurance this year, I think that's a false statement. And I'm not against crop insurance, but we have to change it on these super large ones. Why are these farmers continuing to get bigger and bigger and bigger? Well, crop insurance makes it incredibly safe for our bankers. And if these farmers want to go from 5,000 acres to 10,000 to 15,000 or 20, the bankers all in favor of it. He is covered as well as the landlords. And from a standpoint, you think, I don't want to listen to this guy. I've saved you through sugar policy a minimum of $10 billion, but just if you can get Hoven and Klobuchar and Smith here in Minnesota, as well as Thune in South Dakota and Rounds, and old Durbin and Grassley and Ernst down there, I'll save you 10 plus billion this year alone. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of saving, of starting to get our government run. So if we want things, we tax for it. We don't borrow or print the money for it. Just listen to a little bit here of this August hailstorm in Renville County, Minnesota that devastated crops.
Many farmers are still assessing the damage done by last week's hailstorm.
Some of the worst devastation hit about 100 miles west of the Twin Cities in Renville County. That is where John Lordson talked with a farmer about why it could not have come at a worse time.
It was a bad time.
As soon as I flipped my phone on, it just blew up with texts and pictures of what had happened here.
A lifelong farmer in Renville County, Brian Ryberg, was flying back from vacation last Friday when he heard that hail was pummeling his crops.
You always got to be careful what you wish for. I made the comment a few times that I'd take some wild weather with it just to get some rain, but not quite like this.
Brian had 160 acres destroyed by hail, but some of his neighbors lost more than 1,000 acres. The storm came at a time when Renville County was just starting to get consistent rainfall. And it's not just cornfields that have felt the hail impact. Renville County is also known for soybeans and sugar beets. Many of those fields were also lost.
Here obviously is about as bad as it can get. You take a field that looked like it was going to be average or above average production and now it's a zero away. Crop insurance doesn't make us any money.
For Brian, it's just part of farm life in Minnesota. There's nothing left to do but move forward.
You pull up your bootstraps and wait for next year, so you just prepare the farm for another year and know that you're not going to have much income off of this one.
In Renville County, John Lordson, WCCO News.
Ryberg told John that crop insurance at best will cover the cost of planting his crops. WCCO is here to help you prepare for whatever the weather has coming our way next.
Okay, now we're going to slow it down and go through it bit by bit. And from a standpoint of Brian there, do you realize I was ring bearer in his mom and dad's wedding? his dad won the Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Co-op that will process 3.3 million ton of sugar beets. And back last century, when they're on verge of bankruptcy, Brian's dad, as well as the other board members, called me in and said, "Repke, we got to send you out to Washington because Harold Peterson, a hardcore Republican, and Donnie Holmgren, a hardcore Democrat, aren't getting things done. You will go out there and tell us what to do." And I came back the first meeting with the board, and I said, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to charge so much a ton, everybody's going to pay. And when I need to get into a meeting in Washington, D.C., I have the money to open every door there is." But when I refer to Rick Nolan and Chuck Canton, a hardcore Democrat, and Nolan, a Democratic congressman, it wasn't about anything other than supporting an essential industry. Minnesota is the largest sugar beet producer in the country and has incredible effect in Idaho, Michigan, North Dakota, and a few of the western states. And we need this strong industry. We need to plant that little tiny seed each year that creates a tremendous amount of jobs along the way. And as I'm telling you, they're processing 3.3 million tons of sugar beets. And when the co-op followed what I would recommend, when no one else in the cane or sugar industry could get into Tip O'Neill's office, I could, and I did. And Tip O'Neill said, "Will this policy work for all farm policy so we don't have to do these subsidies?" I said, "Of course they will, Mr. Speaker." And he said, "Then I'll support it." And one of the few people that you'll ever know that I get back to the farm on Monday morning, and all of a sudden the phone rings and they said, "Can you talk to Senator Dole, Mr. Repke?" Well, sure, whenever you want to do it. And before I even got done with that, Senator Dole from Kansas were there. "Repke, I heard you were Republican. What are you doing giving all that money to Democrats?" I said, "I'm giving money so we get sound policy. I'm not giving it to Democrats or Republicans. I'm giving it because it's good policy for the United States." And he said, "Well, I've got some guys that need some money." And I said, "Yeah, we can give you some money for that guy, or that gal." And wait a minute, Senator, that guy has fought us in tooth and nail. We're not going to give a check to his bizarre idea of industry and farm policy. And we got along fine. And both him and Tip O'Neill called me a few times, and I still got some problems with funding some candidates. And as long as they were good, sound leaders, I was willing to write a check through our pact. And so from a standpoint, but now what's happened is lobbying money have figured out the system like I did back in 1980 range. And the reality is we no longer can sit here with a Congress that is elected every 2 years. We have to go through the intellectual property of Alan Repke that I need compensation for this. We go to a 4-year term on House members. We only have 200 some members and 100 members in the Senate. And then we have to see that a group of renegades of 1 or 6 people can't throw a speaker out. In the days of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, they would never even contemplate that a group of 1, 2, 6, or 20 could just be mad about something and throw the speaker out. The speaker historically has been the one that runs our country, and we haven't had a true speaker that understood that since Tip O'Neill. And now I'm going to show you some insight on what Brian and why I want you to call these Republicans O'Hoven up there. And not that I think Stable in Michigan or Klobuchar or Smith know anything about what we need on foreign policy. If we did, they'd had it passed already. But we're going to do a little slower take on this tape now.
Many farmers are still assessing the damage done by last week's hailstorm.
Some of the worst devastation hit about 100 miles west of the Twin Cities in Renville County. That is where John Lordson talked with a farmer about why it could not have come at a worse time.
As soon as I flipped my phone on, why, it just blew up with texts and pictures of what had happened here.
A lifelong farmer in Renville County, Brian Ryberg, was flying back from vacation last Friday when he heard that hail was pummeling his crops.
You always got to be careful what you wish for. I made the comment a few times that I'd take some wild weather with it just to get some rain, but not quite like this.
Brian had 160 acres destroyed by hail, but some of his neighbors lost more than 1,000 acres. The storm came at a time when Renville County was just starting to get consistent rainfall. And it's not just cornfields that have felt the hail impact. Renville County is also known for soybeans and sugar beets. Many of those fields were also lost.
Here,
See, this is what I want our media outlets to put the numbers from this little group. Brian actually is following in my footsteps in many ways. He's on the American Sugar Beet Grower Board like I used to be. He's on the Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative Board that this year finally have got aeration in piles that I tried to get going back in the late 70s. And they finally got their plant expansion to work and hired a manager that actually knew how to run a plant that they're going to successfully get a good payment again, as well as process all their beets rather than hauling a bunch out in the field or leaving them because of an incompetent factory and factory operations that I warned them against 25 years ago, that what they were doing was insane. And 25 years later, it's finally running. But here's what I'm getting at here from a standpoint with Brian's comments. Listen to these.
Obviously, it was about as bad as it can get. You take a field that looked like it was going to be average or above average production, and now it's a zero away. Crop insurance doesn't make us any money.
For Brian.
But see, crop insurance, I contend that I just want the numbers exposed. I want Brian to be safe and plant his crop, as well as all our farmers out there, and focus on that. But all we have to do is have Hoven and the Senate and House Ag Committee look at how lucrative this came. Now, Brian should have 200 bushel yields on corn if he took what he should have taken, at least 85% coverage. He will get a check of over $1,000 an acre, and at the same time won't have the cost of harvesting that crop, trucking a crop, and that. So from a standpoint of a net winner, he's probably in that 1,100 plus range. But I want to see his numbers as well as his neighbors. We're not just picking on Brian. We're just lucky enough to have him on CBS Minneapolis, and to get the start of things. If you allow intelligent people to look at our government policy like I'm talking here, we get things done. And our Koch brothers aren't spend all that money and they thought that we're going to get politicians to change things. No, we have to side saddle on our media outlets. They're the ones that haven't did a job, and that's why I want some channels in the upper Midwest here, paddock of U.S. senators, and we'll keep these people in line. I talk based on experience. And what we're looking at here, when you look at the state of Iowa on the 23 crop, the average coverage is $1,070 an acre. and cost of production is well taken care of, even with a profit at that kind of level. And these Renville County and southern Minnesota farmers are going to be in that 1,000+ range if they've been doing well with their yields. I think Brian, a few guys told me that he had a kind of a series of a few hailstorms, so I'm not sure what his yield are doing. And we talk about the environmental climate deal. Brian is doing some innovative strip till, and so it'd be interesting to see how his yields are to those other farmers in that area, or his old buddy Kurt Sangren, who was farming similar crop rotation, but using conventional process like I used to do. But we're always working to see that our land is protected. And so what we're going to do now is play a little more of this tape.
It's just part of farm life in Minnesota. There's nothing left to do but move forward.
You pull up your bootstraps and wait for next year, so you just prepare the farm for another year and know that you're not going to have much income off of this one.
In Renville.
And see, that was usually the truth. I started farming in 1970. I actually started in second grade, but in 1970, and I came home from the University of Minnesota at Crookston as a graduate, and got hailed out twice the first year, and planted soybeans. But I was lucky enough to have hail insurance, I guess, on them, and got that. And everybody said, "Should I put another crop?" "Oh, you'll never get hail in 2 years." I had actually a worse hailstorm the second storm that went through. But we didn't have this revenue protection like these policies have today. And yes, they need crop insurance. But do we, the taxpayer, need to give them $11.6 billion like we did in 2023? Absolutely not. And to save $11 billion, so when I'm talking to you, old Repke, he just saved us $10 billion. I'll leave $1 billion on the line if to help young farmers or farmers that had some problem, but at the minimum we're going to take all this subsidy away. And for this year, all those landlords out there that get big rent and have been guaranteed a return, whether it hails or freezes off or wind damage like they had in Iowa a couple of years ago, they paid the 62% and not the taxpayer struggling to keep a roof over their heads. And so we get a government that's based on doing what the citizens are willing to pay tax on, rather than continue to borrow and put our overall world economy in a mess. We'll hit a little more of what Brian had to say, but I think the numbers will say he came out as good or better than his crops where he did get a good yield. And what I'm getting at, he had a $5.91 a bushel revenue against his, if he had a 200 bushel yield, you take that times 170, and then if he had the rest of his crop, if he had 200 bushel yield but only average 470, this crop insurance would be right in where he wants to be financially. Thanks for listening to Inform TV. I'm Alan Repke, Alexandria, Minnesota, box 333. If you want to throw a $100 bill in an envelope, it'd be greatly appreciated. This is just the tip of looking at the issues of today. And remember, this guy will get you a presidential candidate that you'll be super proud of. This guy, Alan Repke, will get Putin out of Ukraine before the end of the year, just using resources that they already should have had. Thanks for listening.